All right. What up, Mom? How hot is it there today? Probably really hot. Larry, pleasure to see you as well. Thank you for joining us.
30.
Jackie, Julie. Awesome. Richard, always a pleasure. Yes, Les joined us. Michael, hey Michael, how you doing? Tanya is there as well. Vicky, good to see you as well. We're just doing the good old last couple moment countdown here before we go live. And let's see here. Lost all my things. Here we go. All right. And almost 2:30. We got just about 30 more seconds and then we will get rocking and rolling. From steamy New York. Hello, Jan. Thank you for joining me. Come on and join us on video today. Jan.
I'm coming.
All right.
There it goes. I didn't want to go.
Thank you so much, Jan, for joining me this week for weekly sessions. I've got to tell everybody that Jan put together a great presentation for us. I think you guys are really, really going to enjoy it. I would like to ask as we get started here, would you do me a favor and would you please introduce yourself to everybody? I know you well, but make sure everybody else does. Who are you? What do you do?
I'm Jan Breules-Dorang. I'm a certified professional bookkeeper in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And yes, it's hot here today too. I own my own business, JBD Bookkeeping, and I've been operating for about 25 years, and I've been doing bookkeeping for over 42 years. So I've done this a long time.
Nice. Very, very experienced, which makes you a very good person for our topic of the day, which we'll jump into in just a quick moment here. Shall we jump into our slides and kind of get things rocking and rolling?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Let's see here. So our episode today is going to be about the importance of setting client boundaries and expectations. But before we jump into that real quick, I wanted to give everybody a quick reminder of a magical date today is. Today is the day, in the US at least, that the price changing or like the subscription-based pricing changes for the US. So as of today, all new subscriptions will be under the new retail pricing. And if you do any upgrades or downgrades as of today, that pricing and such will change. I've added these extra slides. This is from something we did a couple weeks back. They're in the presentation specifically, so people want to download it can go and look at it again. I'm going to jump over all this stuff, but I just wanted to draw attention to everybody again with this before we jump into the bigger conversation. You got it lucky, Jan, right? You guys don't have the
Not yet. We figured it's probably going to be coming. Same as in the US, you guys have had to certify it every year. That starts this year, actually August 3rd. So we are now going to have to certify every year.
You guys haven't had to certify every year?
No, not since I passed like in 2016. Yeah. So yeah, it's they finally brought it into Canada. We're a little behind.
I'm glad we could share our misery with you.
Yeah, I had like 4 emails on it today. It's like I was like, oh no.
You know, I actually do firmly believe it's important that we're doing that every single year. I think it is a little bit of a pain in the rear, but it's something we should do. It's a commitment to our craft, right? And it makes sure that we truly know how we're using this tool. So I think it's a good thing. There's
I do too.
Right? You and I kind of talked about that before. There are some major differences between QuickBooks Canada and QuickBooks US.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah. maybe that's another topic for another session, because I think we could spend a whole time on that.
We could.
But you can, everybody, so you know, you can actually have a pro advisor in both places. Some people do.
Yes, I do, but I just don't certify in the US.
You'd have to do it every year. Ha ha ha. So you've already introduced yourself, so I'm going to go past that. And actually, you know what I'd love to do is, I believe you've got the presentation ready to share on your side. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I'm going to let you share, and I'm just going to bug you with questions and such. I looked through the
Of course you will.
a lot of great stuff. Well, it'd be no other way, right? Hey, Linda, good to see you there on Facebook as well. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, how do I get this so it's full screen? Where's my thing for full screen?
Oh, you're right, almost there. And so the top bar to the right, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from the left. Down a little bit. Over to your left a little, to the next tab group. Keep going, keep going. It's like a bluish color, I think. Says the colorblind guy. That one, right?
That, more tools. Fit to full page, that's what it's telling me it is.
I'll tell you
Oh,
what.
well.
I'll share. How about I do the share real quick, and then you tell me when to advance forward. Does that work for you?
Okay, you'll be able to tell by me talking.
Perfect. And let's see here. I need to. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Oh, we're having technical difficulties today. Hold on 1 second here. Where'd my Zoom go?
That's what I ran into. It's like, where'd it go?
Yeah, but I'm supposed to know how to do this stuff. There we go. Ah, nice. It was hiding behind everything else. All right, get this pulled back up. So how's everybody's day going so far?
Busy.
Boom, share. All right, I should be sharing the right thing. Are you guys seeing the slide deck at this moment? Yes. Jan, you good?
Okay. So
thank you.
Thanks,
Take it away.
Michael. Yeah. So a lot of this came from experience over the years and having clients that figured I have a home office and figuring they could stop in at any time, a day or a night. You know, stopping them expecting me responding to emails at all hours. So I really started setting boundaries with my clients. This is the boundaries I've set out, which for me are essential for a good client relationship. I also put in my engagement letter, and I talk about it when I have the initial client meeting so that they understand where I'm coming from. It was harder to teach my existing clients that these are the new rules.
It's a good point. It's a really good point. It is. I've heard people say that before, right? If you build in the bad habits at the very, very beginning, then it's a situation that they always kind of expect that. And this is where, even as I put the post, I said, I've been guilty of this for a really long time. That desire to over please can actually comes back to bite you in the rear. You know, I've got some clients that love to call me at like 9 o'clock at night, and I keep trying to tell them, no.
See, I stopped answering the phone if they called at night, if and not responding to emails, or if I respond, I make sure I do it so it has I set when they're going to get it the next morning.
Thing. Yeah.
So that I'm not, you know, because if I respond to one or respond to a text, they expect me to constantly respond.
So that's a question I'd like to ask everybody in the comments, both Zoom and Facebook, is I will use an application called Boomerang, or there's others out there where basically instead of sending an email immediately, you can time when it goes out. Do you use something like that? And if you do, what do you use? So back to you though, Jen.
Okay, so the words that I basically came out with is like, there has to respect, integrity, time management, communication, no, and consistency.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
Consistently saying no is what you're saying.
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So that goes back to that idea of what we were just saying, that if you're answering emails back, if you always answer an email back within 30 seconds of them sending it, they're going to always think you're going to do that. Right.
Yes.
So
So it takes away the expectations that, yes, you're going to. I also have in my email signature that I will get back to them within 48 hours.
That's a very smart idea too.
So that they don't, hopefully they're not expecting that, okay, I'm going to respond immediately. I also have that they can book an appointment, and they're finding, because it's all on Zoom, they're finding, that works better. Like I was telling Matt earlier that I had a client show up to drop off her papers, and she wants to set up a trading session for QBO. And it's like, in my email is the link, go in and book an time that's best for you.
Yeah, so that's another good question for everybody that's watching as well is, do you use a Calendly or an Acuity or some kind of calendar like that where people are able to book their own, like they can log in themselves, book a time on your calendar and not make it to where you have to handle that? Would love to hear what people are using there as well. So communication, when you're talking about communication, does that include like where people are going to, like how they're going to communicate with you?
Yeah, so whether it's, I do have some clients that find it easier to text. So I will get email, phone calls, and text. And I've made it very clear, one way. So don't email me, text me, and call me with the same issue. and what I get really annoyed. And so then I take longer to respond because they've annoyed me. So I've told them, you will annoy me, and that's not a good thing, because I'll then put you behind anything else. So send one. Yeah,
I definitely agree with that. As everybody by now should be pretty familiar, I'm a super fan of email.
Yes.
And it's, it's just, you get bombarded by this stuff all the time. So I actually prefer a text message, or if it's something that's super urgent, I'm old school. Pick up the phone and call me. I actually have an old school phone that I can use because I like it that way better.
Right.
I feel like you get everything, the communication, it's more direct. You can handle something right away instead of going back and forth personally. So,
yeah.
And then,
it depends on the client. Like I have one because of COVID, that's fun. He's entering all their sales. So, and so what he's doing is that for any deposit made, because they actually use a different although they're on QuickBooks, they use a file maker done specifically for the industry.
Yep.
So he sends me the cash receipt.
Yeah.
Every day. So I know what it is. And these days there's always checks from the government. So he'll include those separately because of course they don't go in. Yeah. So he sends it to me. And it's like, and if he forgets, and when I'm looking in the bank, it's like, where's this deposit? What's this deposit for? And so it's making my life much easier.
Yeah.
But I told him, don't text me, don't call me with it. Send it to me. I need to see it physically. So
very good point. Now in the comments, we've got people saying that they're using Calendly, Acuity, Tanya's using Jennifer, and we've got Jenny is using MS Bookings, which is part of the Office 365 environment.
Yeah, I use Calendly. And and that's just what I like, because it'll, I use Zap, so it goes to Zoom, it goes to my Google Calendar, and then an email gets sent out. So
the only challenge I've seen with both Acuity and Calendly, so anybody who has an idea of how to fix this it would be greatly appreciated. It's great for us, the one we're trying to book the event for somebody else. What it doesn't happen is for that person, if they have Zoom, it doesn't stick it onto their Zoom. So like normally if I'm logged into Zoom all the time, so I can it'll give me a reminder of like, you've got this meeting coming up in 15 minutes. And I just click to join. But Calendly doesn't do that same thing when it's somebody else's meeting that they're sending to me. But I don't know, that's just a weird thing. So
there should be a Zap to do that.
Yeah.
And there probably is. Brian Clare in Ottawa. He's the Zap king.
Yeah, definitely is.
I may have to ask him. How do I do this?
We've got your establishing boundaries here. So most of us do not like boundaries.
I don't like boundaries either, but it became essential so that as if there was a phone call, a knock on the door wasn't like, oh no, who's here now? Or who's trying to reach me now? I needed to get rid of that. I wanted to get rid of that. And it usually was from clients who just didn't care. That I often cared more than they did.
Yeah, and that is a hard one. You can never make somebody care more about their business, Yeah, that's a difficult one.
It is. And I often would care more about it than they did. And then it was like, wait a minute. No.
So once you've got the boundaries evaluated, I guess the next aspect of all this would be trying to dive into like client expectations. Is that correct?
Yeah. Which will be, the screen that you went back instead of forward.
Oh, back here. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So these were things that I came up with that we implemented to get rid of the, oh no, not again, Okay. So was, adhering to calls during office hours, so I will not answer the phone if it's after office hours, or I will look to see who is calling.
That makes sense.
So I mean, there are times where a client has said, I need to call you at like 5:36. It's like, so then I will accept because we established there was going to be a time to call. But if they're just calling because all of a sudden they thought of something that they had to ask, and usually it's not important, I don't answer. If they show up at the door.
Is that where you use like a text message instead, maybe? So like, because I definitely we have a scenario.
So I have on my phone, I have a Samsung. I can decline a call with a message.
Okay.
So I will then, and it's not automatic, so I will just type in, like, thank you for your call. You have called after office hours. We will call you tomorrow.
Got it.
And after they've gotten that a couple of times, they've stopped. They don't call me after hours, or they'll send a text to say, are you going to be available?
Perfect.
Most of the texts I get are, will you be available? I had a client who originally was supposed to come yesterday. He doesn't live in town, was coming today. And I'm like, no, I can't. He says, well, can I meet you at like 5? No, I have another appointment and the office is closed. He's like, but, and I'm like, sorry, butts don't work anymore.
So have you ever had a situation? I mean, I think for some people, it may be a situation where they get concerned about being very hard-nosed about these boundaries, right? But it's important. Have you ever had a situation where they really kicked back a lot against this and with you at all, or?
Yeah, and they're no longer clients.
There you go. Okay.
It ended up having to be the conversation. You need to respect my boundaries.
Yeah.
And if you want this to work, there has to be respect. I said, the one in particular I think of had, would show up at like 8 o'clock and like would ring the doorbell, bang on the door. It's like bang on the window. And I'm like, and I just wouldn't answer. And it's like, yeah, it's like, I'm sorry, but, would you like me coming to your house at 8 o'clock? Well, no. Then why are you expecting me to answer to you without an appointment?
Laura in the comments said that I have a custom message set up in my iPhone that I can select to reply to a call after hours, which I love. One of the things we use Dialpad as our phone service for the business. And it has one of those like automated voice, dial 1 for Matthew Fulton, dial 2 for Mary Strada, that kind of thing. And you can establish how certain phone calls are handled during office hours and after office hours. So you can make it to where they're forwarded directly to just a message that says you've reached after hours, blah, blah, blah. So we set that up pretty nicely. But the other nice thing is, at least for me, with my clients, I prefer text message over email. So I've always kind of let them know, like, hey, if there's something, feel free to shoot me a text, because it's sitting there and then it makes it really easy for me to get back to them. And it's just less formal, but it's still searchable. It still has a full audit log, everything else, to give me that same kind of control. So
yeah, I have one client that she only uses text.
Okay.
She's in retail. She says, to pick up the phone is difficult. Email can often, but a text on my phone is real easy. Like, she was dropping stuff off and she texted saying, I'm here.
The other thing I do nowadays quite a bit is I'll do a very quick video on my phone of myself. I think I've sent them to you before as an answer. Like, I'll just take and I'll record myself and I'll shoot that over as a multimedia message, because then I can get my thing across, I just find that you get more information across when you're seeing somebody, generally, at least.
Yes. And, I have some clients that are not tech savvy, so they don't like it at all.
Yeah.
So this slide just really gives it a lot of information. Mostly we've talked about with the integrity, time management, all of that stuff, and the biggest thing I've learned is no is a valid answer. They may, I've had clients, especially during the pandemic, can you just do this? Can you just do this? It'll only take you a minute. And I'm like, I can do it, but it's going to cost.
That's a great, absolutely right. It's, again, I don't have much to say here because I'm horrible about this. I'm just so bad at this that I should just shut up and listen. So
well, it got to the point I was getting so frustrated that I had to do something. When it's like when it was becoming no longer fun dealing with some of my clients.
So how do we set the client expectations then? How do we, now that we, again, like we said, we've got these boundaries, how do we make sure we set these, and how to, in a manner to which it doesn't feel like we're limiting to them, but we're setting the proper expectations? What do you suggest?
So I had a conversation with all of them.
Okay.
I had a conversation as to, going forward, this is what is going to be, these are going to be basically the code of conduct that needs to be done. Okay. I had to, because some of them did not, or, they figured, well, I should be at their beck and call. Now I do have, and I have a couple of clients that don't fall into this because they pay for the extra service for me to be available. I've actually
heard of people doing that before, and it's an interesting way and an intelligent way to do it, that you sell like a VIP service, right?
Yeah.
That they have access to you X number, like all the time, special number type thing, and it's X more money, right?
Yeah. So I set it up out that it's $600 a month. And I have several that pay it so that, I do have to answer the emails and everything else. They're respectful if I'm on holidays, which is really good. Because I always tell them I have no internet. They don't need to know I'll get it on my phone. But yeah, so it's like, you want this, you need to pay for it. It's a service you now have to pay.
So when you're setting up the client expectations, is this, you said you start off at the beginning, is it also part of your service contract? Do you have some kind of language in there as well to people?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So I have it so that, what does my VIP program include? So it's access after office hours. It's responding to email, calls, texts. I have a couple of clients that want me available at all times. Okay. And so they're paying to have access to me.
Which is still less expensive than having a full-time employee, right?
Yes.
So that's a great trade-off aspect. It's a very good point. So as we've got up here, so you've got a couple words again. You want to help explain this part of it? So the client expectations.
Yeah. So with client expectations, so I make sure that they're written, they're in writing, they're concise, and in language that they understand, not that I don't use the accounting technology, because not all of them understand. I mean, I have one now who didn't even understand what the profit and loss detailed. So I've had to be very clear as to, so that they understand, so with being knowledgeable, that they need to respect the knowledge and
Okay.
the training that I have.
Absolutely.
Not that, they think they know better than, especially I deal a lot with like NPOs and small businesses, and they think they know it all. It's like, really, you don't.
So that actually makes an interesting question. If you deal with a lot of nonprofits, and from my understanding, a lot of nonprofits, you have a scenario where you're having boards are changing all the time. Does that mean you're having to always reestablish these boundaries with that type of a client, or is there somebody that
At
like,
least here, at least in Canada, I deal with the executive director.
Okay.
So I don't normally go to board meetings. I have gone to a couple of their annual general meetings, just because if there's questions, and they pay me to go, because I'm like, I'm not required to be here, and so they pay for my time. But yeah, so with the MPOs, I actually deal with the executive director, and with a couple of them, I've met the chair only a couple of times.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the times, at least the ones I've worked with down here, so I shouldn't make that, shouldn't say everybody, but they're usually there's a lot of times they're volunteering because they have a different job as well, right? So it's the amount of commitment that's going to go into it, where the executive director, I would assume, is they're committed.
They're full time, yeah, and they're the ones that oversee everything, which is, I prefer it that way than responding or reporting back to the chair or the treasurer.
And you mentioned earlier that when you're communicating to clients about expectations in language they understand, I really feel that's something that's really important to kind of touch base on. So you're talking about, explain that a little bit more. I know we're not talking about using technical jargon, but I think we're also talking about saying it to them in a way they want to actually hear it. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and that can be that can change per person, but it's, yeah, very true. Yeah, because it's, everyone hears things differently. No matter how you say it, they hear it in a different way.
Okay, we got a great question actually from Scott Citron in Facebook. He's asking, and this is open to everybody to respond, please. What is the oddest accounting request you've ever received from a nonprofit? I don't do very much with nonprofits myself, so I haven't had too many odd ones. But who's got some magic with that? Anybody in the comments want to share to it? We'll follow back up with some ideas for you, Scott, because I love that question. It's a really, really good one.
I do too, because I think if I had to deal with board members, it would be much different.
Yeah. I think
board members,
we had people that wanted us to like make changes, like major dramatic changes overnight to like their entire budget, and be like, we've got to have this right tomorrow for the board. It's like, again, it goes back to expectations and boundaries.
Well, yeah, and it's, yeah, and I did have that happen once, and it's like, you, at your annual meeting, your budget was approved. You're going to have to go back to your members to get your budget changed. And then they're like, oh.
Good point. Very good point. So we've got knowledgeable. We've talked about respect, obviously respect, communication back and forth. Confidentiality, of course, is an important thing. And that's on both sides, right?
Yes.
So there's the confidentiality of the information they're sharing with you, but also your processes the other way.
Yeah.
I
And
would
that
say.
really comes into play, especially with NPOs,
Okay.
because a lot of times the board they see an overall number for salaries. They don't, all the board members aren't involved in the in staff and stuff. And I've had board members ask me, well, what is so and so making and so and so? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't go, you need to go back to your chair or your CEO.
It reminds me of Intuit before, like quite a while back, when the payroll stuff would come through and the payroll wasn't blocked off. Anybody who had access to the bank feeds could see everybody else's paychecks. And it was like, it wasn't an obvious thing at first, but that definitely happened. I had an interesting one on confidentiality, and it wasn't a major deal, but I had two different clients that were in the same industry. And so we don't, I don't talk about the fact that we've got these different people with each other usually. I love it when I see my client's name in other clients' books because they're spending money with each other. That's the super win of the year when that happens. But one of them had used the terms of service from one company and put it onto their terms of service. And it was kind of caught after the fact. And I was like, wait a second here. And at first I thought I screwed up. Like I gave them that, somehow I gave it to them. Turned out they knew each other and it was totally fine. But I had no way to know it at first because that confidentiality back and forth. So,
yeah, you often don't know who someone knows.
That's true.
You're finding that more and more. It's a small world. So accuracy is that the information is put in correctly, that they're, for me, it's also that they're not having to question, what did I do? How did I come up with that figure?
What kind of the over under do you have? Because this is an interesting one. And again, love everybody's feedback on this as well. We all know there's going to be little nuanced mistakes. Something's going to get categorized wrong just a little bit. And I will admit, Canada is, you guys are much more stringent than we are. You have to have backup documentation. So you probably are far less likely to have something in a wrong category than we are down here. But it happens every once in a while. And it's usually not, we look at the question whether it's material or not, if it's in this category to that. But what's your, how much wiggle room do you feel is acceptable in that?
Usually if I'm not sure, I will actually ask, where does this go? And I find a lot of the business owners I deal with, they know what they've spent on stuff.
Okay.
They just usually haven't put it all together. So, I mean, some of it some of it I will use my own judgment from my years of experience. Like, okay, it's, it's a retail store. So, chances are they bought supplies or purchases of some kind. Where the tough area goes is when they're using credit cards with no receipt, which you're not allowed to do in Canada, because it's not considered an expense, that, was this personal or not? And what I have done over the years, if I'm not sure, they didn't mark it, I'll put it to due to shareholder, and I review that with them every month. And boy, do I get receipts real fast.
So that's really helped doing those reviews, because that is actually something that has always been an ongoing challenge. Trying to make sure people understand the difference between having a paycheck versus distribution, and how at the end of the year, if you're taking money and spending money on personal stuff, that all goes to distribution, which means it's hitting your personal income. It's not a business expense, right? Yeah. And then the tax man cometh calling, and all of a sudden they're like, why am I paying all this tax? Right? So,
because you're using the company for your own good.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So,
and when all of a sudden they get nailed with that, I have one, and it's two owners. One puts everything on the business credit card, everything, I'm sorry, 6 coffees a day is unacceptable when there's a coffee machine in the office. And so I had talked to the owner and told him, we're going to put this, to your due to shareholders, and it will be added to your T4. and I did it in writing. So, and sure enough, when I did the T4s, I emailed them. You've got like almost 13,000 being added, which you've had no taxes taken off.
Yeah. And T4s, just so everybody's familiar, is equivalent to like a W-2 in the States.
Yeah.
So makes me think of Terminator for some reason though. So, okay. So we've gone through knowledgeable. We've talked about being respectful, confidentiality. We've talked about accuracy, value.
Value,
So
yes.
what does that mean?
Well, what I found, clients expect that they're getting what they're paid for.
Agreed, but the definition of how do we make sure our definition of getting what they paid for is the same through a good communication, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's through good communication. I also, part of my engagement, they actually check off the services that they want. Okay. We review it if they want extra. So, okay. You know, I mean, it's not, sometimes it's not just the bookkeeping monthly with the reconciliations, payroll, especially in this last year and a half, it's doing the government subsidies that have become available. So those are all, you know, so they want to, you know, so the biggest thing is they want to make sure that what I've said I'm going to do, that, you know, they're getting paid for. I mean, I had a couple, I mean, that they're paying me for what I'm worth and and they're getting their value.
And how defined do you go into that stuff? And what I mean by that is we can do a very high level, like we do your bookkeeping, we do your payroll, we're going to file your sales tax. Well, do you have it listed out as, but when we're doing your monthly bookkeeping, it includes, we're going to categorize your transactions, we're going to reconcile the accounts. Do you have the scope of work nailed down to a deeper detail like that? Because that's what
I do.
Right?
I do. So they, you know, so it's like, so how I have it is like under bookkeeping, and then there is like accounts, you know, transactions, accounts payable, accounts receivable, invoice, like, because not a lot of my clients, they do their invoicing. Yeah. I don't do it because that way it's done right away. But it's like payroll. What's the payroll cycle? Weekly, bi-weekly, monthly? How many employees? Like, so I get all of their information from this first form that they fill out prior to our initial meeting now.
Okay, so I'm going to guess, at least I want to know, I'm guessing other people would want to know as well. You're saying they fill out this form. Are we talking like a digital online form, or is it a piece of paper form? What is it's
a digital form that they fill out.
Very nice. I mean, these are all great tips. How I want to ask a harder question with this then. What, you know, how often or what percentage of your billing would you say is actually hourly or added additional billing is what I'm trying to say. So it's out of scope billing. What percentage would you say that is usually?
Right now would probably be about 30%.
That is kind of what I expected. You know, it was a trick question that you absolutely passed because, you know, it's really like, and I kind of knew you would, of course. It's really easy to talk about having these systems in place and how we do this. And hey, I've got systems in place like this, but I'm not great at actually like implementing, like saying, I got to charge you for that. Right. So
I wasn't for a long time, but especially when COVID hit, it was like, okay, this is a lot of extra things I'm doing. Like we have, for example, a wage subsidy. It takes almost an hour to get the calculations and to file it. And and actually this one client that I've had for years were like, you need to charge us for this. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so I started doing that. Same thing as like one of the taxes we have to file here is HST, harmonized sales tax. I charge a fee for that for whenever it gets filed, whether quarterly or monthly or whatever. So it's an added fee that they know is not included just in my bookkeeping fee anymore.
Interesting. It's good stuff. So, and that, okay, we've talked about value, then communication, we've been talking about that. You've already handled that as well. The consistency, again, by having these contracts and having this stuff established, it should be a lot easier to have the consistency. And that comes down to being able to plan better for your time for each person too, I'd assume.
Yeah. And not, not being laid away. Oh, but please, I really need the help. Like, yeah, you need the help. And what are you going to pay me for it? I've become very good at saying it's going to be an extra charge. It's like, because I've really stressed to them, my time is valuable. I mean, I have a fair number of mine are like on monthly. I have one of my older clients who did not want to go to hourly billing at all. He wanted to keep hourly, and especially once COVID, and of course, breaking my leg, he wanted to make sure I was getting paid for the time that I was spending.
Which is great. It's always nice.
Which is kind of nice, yes.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, as we kind of close this down, we've got the information here, but what is this the best way to connect to you? How do you like people to connect to you?
Email is usually one of the best, or email is usually one of the better ways to get me.
Perfect.
And I realized on the slide I hadn't put my phone number, because that's always another way.
Well, one of the things, so every episode that we do after the fact, we actually go and I put everything up onto the QB Community Live webpage, and people will be able to grab your contact information from there as well.
Yeah.
So, matter of fact, I'll show just real quickly here, like each episode, it's usually over the next weekend. I will come in, we upload it, I'll do kind of like a breakout of the different topics that were discussed. Yeah. People's contact information and the ability to download all of the slides and such. So people will be able to grab that there. And while I'm here real quick, I'm going to keep talking about this to everybody. If there's one ask that I could have of everybody out there at this point in time, my ask would be to ask, try to get people as much as possible. I would love to build up this community calendar as much as we can. So if you have events that you have coming up in the future, please feel free to add them in. It's free. You can do it yourself. The goal is the more of these, the more events and everything else that are coming on here, and we can help promote every week what things are coming up, this can become a place where everybody will be able to go to it and use it as a resource to grab. So we've got stuff that's going already. There are different conferences. There's now filtering capability through here as well. So you can choose different people. It continues to expand and grow, of course. So
I'll have to add in, add in the Canadian Bookkeepers Conference. I never thought, because you can attend as a non-member.
And actually, so that gives me another category I can put is different geographic location. So that would be good. So Jan, I really, really appreciate you joining us today. We're not going to have you go quite yet, but I'm going to do a couple of little bits of information. And so next week, we're going to actually have Kristen is going to be joining us. We're going to be talking about how to tackle a growing backlog list of tasks. She's actually got a special course, or it's called an end table, coming up with the roundtable group that's going to be starting on July 29th. That they're calling it's the Backlog Rescue. So we're going to get to talk a little bit about it first next week, and then so people have a better idea for it. This is something you can register for. There's a special pricing specifically if you follow this link for QB Community Live members. And their intent of it is basically there's going to be 3 specific workshops. You're going to be working on 2 different lists, and you're going to be working together to change the way things are done to get rid of that backlog. But we'll learn more about it next week. And then we've also got in August, I wanted to let people know about it now, Ted Callahan will be coming back to join us again in August 12th. He's going to be giving us an update of what's going on with Intuit. And then most important, of course, will be, he's going to talk about some of the changes with the customer support, so forth as well. So we've got some exciting stuff coming up throughout all of August as well. Any last words, anything you'd like to add before we close down for the day?
Not that I can think of. This was fun. You've got
Thank
me
you.
enjoying this more and more. I did my first one live at Cubic Connect 2 years ago with Matthew, and I kind of got held where I was sitting.
Yes.
I saw him and went over to see him and Linda and Christy, and it's like, oh, so we're going live now. I'm like, no.
Sorry.
Now I'm liking to doing it. I mean, I was very nervous in the beginning, but that's settled down.
Thank you. I openly invite anybody who would like to come and be a co-host. Absolutely would love to have you on. The way I see it, my job is to try to make it to where you enjoy it as much as possible, to make it as easy as possible for you. Jan, you did a phenomenal job this week, and I'd just love to see this progression, this growth of you. So thank you. Thank you so much for taking that journey.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Well, everybody, as always, here's wishing you all a very successful week. Bye, guys.